Testing. Testing. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? It's working. Oh shit, that doesn't work. All right, this is my first live stream, just messing around. I've got a shite ton of Shadows of Brimstone miniatures that I have to build. Actually, I have to build these before I can even continue my gameplay because I need them. I read through the mission and I realized I needed these Hungry Dead, which are from the revised edition of Shadows of Brimstone, and I haven't built them yet, so I gotta get those ready to go. I'm just gonna grab something and then we'll start talking. Yeah, so I just thought I'd play around with this. I was kind of bored and I gotta do all these damn miniatures anyways, so I figured why not try out this whole live stream thing. Oh, I already have one more person than I expected to have, so hello, DVC Bear. If I get people's names wrong and stuff, please forgive me. I cannot fucking see. I'm basically blind. Makes it very difficult. So if people have something they want to talk about, they can obviously post it in the chat, and if I know anything about it, I'm happy to touch on it. If not, figured I'd just be talking about kind of recent Kickstarters and what's going on in the wonderful world of crowdfunded board games. Probably start with talking about Wander, Leclerc's Revenge, because I cannot figure out for the life of me why that game is having so much trouble funding. And maybe somebody else has some thoughts on it. Of course, I also have to do this while I'm cutting out my miniatures, and I don't want to screw them out, so I gotta be careful. Somewhat careful, at least. So yeah, Leclerc's Revenge. So this is a standalone sequel / new expansion for a dungeon crawler that's got some pretty decent buzz. I mean, I think it's got like a dice tower award or whatever, which, you know, your mileage may vary on if that means anything, but it's better than not having a dice tower award. And yet it seems to be struggling to fund on like an epic level. I know that it did fund, but it took a while, and it like barely is funded, and they're getting into stretch goals now, but you know, it doesn't seem like it's kind of exploding off the racks, and I cannot figure out why. It's visually appealing, so it's basically, it's very similar to Arcadia Quest, which is a game that Simon seems to have completely forgotten about, much to their detriment, I think. Because I think it's about time that they put out an official, it kind of looks like shit, but it's fine, solo mode for that game and printed it. They put this out a couple years ago, and I got it all printed, and it is cool, but I hate DIYing stuff like cards especially. It's just such a pain in the ass, and they never ever look as good as the ones that you get, you know, from a product, from a boxed product. The only set I did buy, I bought a set on MakePlayingCards.com of Warhammer Quest, the 1995 game, like all the treasure sets, and those do look really, really good. They're still not identical matches because they're not weathered and kind of yellowed like the ones were from that campaign or from that game, because they're not 30 years old. But those are pretty much as good as you could possibly get. They're probably in better shape than, you know, anything but a sealed deck that is floating around out there. I'm just trying to get her feet cleaned up a little bit here so that I don't have trouble when I go to stick her under her base. So anyways, yeah, there's the first miniature. I don't know. I think these are a dramatic improvement. These were some of the shitest miniatures from the original Brimstone Swamps of Death. Like, these were really bad. I like the fact, first of all, that they're one piece. It makes it much easier to, at least some of them are, makes it much easier to use them. And I like the fact that they're just much, much more detailed. You know, they came out with those revised sets, I want to say about 2 years ago. And I was really excited because the miniatures needed to be redone. And so I went out and I bought them both, obviously, and got them home and got all the cards. I mean, it was an immense pain in the butt to integrate that stuff, because it was another one of those situations where I don't believe that they were replacing everything. And even if they were, I have so much Brimstone stuff that is integrated in with the core box stuff that it wouldn't have mattered. This glue thing might be all fucked. This thing, I don't know why I bought this Zap-A-Gap. I've got a friend who just like advocates for it. I have never had luck with it, and I stopped using it for years, and I went back to it, and it's still kind of shitty, but I wanted to buy some, so I gotta try and use it at least. So yeah, so getting back to Wander, why is this game not funding? It's got a solo cooperative mode. I think it's entirely cooperative, actually. And it's got the same exploding dice mechanic that Arcadia Quest does. It's got a very similar visual style. It's got tons of content, even just in the core box. They seem pretty stacked in terms of stuff to do. And it's not that it's been invisible in terms of marketing. I have seen it all over Facebook. I haven't done a video about it yet myself, and now that I'm doing this, I probably won't. But if anybody has any thoughts or insights into why Wander may be a little slow on the uptake, feel free to send them along. Because other than the price is a little bit high, and the fact that they canceled the campaign, that's never a good look, because this is a campaign that they relaunched. They had it up like a month ago, and then it wasn't getting the money that they needed, and so they canceled it and they relaunched it, and it was like $10 cheaper. The main thing that I heard people complaining about was the price, and they dropped it by literally like $10. So I don't know that necessarily took care of that. And then there were also complaints about like content from the previous Kickstarter, but I believe they made some of that stuff available as add-ons. But other than that, I mean, it's integrated with their Shovel Knight game. So they came out with like an expansion where you're going to get like Shovel Knight miniatures. That seems really cool to me. And, you know, like I said, it's pretty well regarded. And so the reason that it is not funding other, you know, other than, listen, like Wander, whoever makes that game, who the fuck do you think you are going up against Oathsworn and Death May Die? Like, I don't know. Obviously, there might not have been visibility into that. I'm pretty sure Oathsworn was live before they relaunched Wander, and that was probably a bad idea. Not to mention Slay the Spire, which has already pulled in 2 point something million. So definitely bad timing in terms of, this is not a slow time on Kickstarter. This is like the busiest time of the year on Kickstarter, basically. But beyond that, I don't know. It's a mystery to me. A mystery wrapped in a riddle, or something very similar to that. Meanwhile, keep going through, cutting these guys out. I go back and forth on these hard plastic sprue-based miniatures on if they're really worth it or if it's just a pain in the ass. I think the Brimstone miniatures are pretty good. I got a comment the other day, maybe even today actually. No, it was on Facebook. Somebody was talking about Cthulhu. They were talking about Zombicide, Undead and Alive, and how they were going to proxy those miniatures in. And they were making fun of the fact that, hey, at least these miniatures have faces, you know, which I don't think it's entirely true that the Brimstone miniatures are faceless. There's definitely more detail in a CMON miniature on the face in general, I would say. But I do like these. You know, I like putting them together. I'm working through the Brimstone restoration project right now, where I am. You know what? I've even got some of this shit sitting around. So I went through a couple years ago, and I had this brilliant idea. I was just gonna prime all these minis black or brown, and then I was gonna dry brush them like tan, and that was gonna bring out the detail, which it kind of does, but they look like shit. And this is the second time that I have repainted these miniatures, because I also tried painting them for real. I have a real thing with miniatures and painting. It's all or nothing for me. I have to be able to paint them to a consistent level of quality, or I don't like getting them to the table, because I don't like them being like mismatched. Like, I would never play with an unpainted miniature. These guys will not get onto the table until I get them painted. So I got to do that on top of just getting them kind of built. And so I was going through and I was slowly painting my Brimstone miniatures to varying levels of quality. Some of the larger miniatures, they turned out pretty well, and they're certainly playable, but even still, they weren't like amazing. And so I came up with this new style where, and I don't have a Brimstone miniature sitting right here, but I have, well, even those won't really work. I guess I have these guys, where I'm just spraying them with my Gray Seer contrast paint, which is ridiculously expensive. I don't know why, but I'm just obsessed with this stuff, because I think mostly because it's just so thin, like it doesn't gunk up. I've never really lost any detail with this. And it also just works really well in conjunction with the Army Painter Dark Tone wash. So I just spray them, and then I thin this stuff down now. I used to not thin it down, and so if I wasn't very careful, it would get clumpy and kind of look like shit. I saw a video and the guy suggested thinning it down with mineral oil or spirits or whatever, and I did that and I liked the results. And so now I'm going back through and I'm repainting all this stuff. You can see here's like the corpse piles, and I've got just like a truly terrifying backlog of shit that I have to repaint. With the hope being that once I catch up, it will be relatively easy for me to get a miniature to the table, because I will have a set process that is scalable, because it doesn't take as long as micro painting them. I'm not a bad painter, but I'm a very, very bad speed painter. It takes me forever, and I just can't. I just don't have the bandwidth to do it on this scale, especially. You know, like something like Blackstone Fortress, I did paint all those miniatures except for the heroes, because they were really cool miniatures. So I had my very, very skilled friend Bo paint those for me. Something like that, where there's like a finite number of miniatures, because I never got any of the expansions. I did paint all those and they look good. But something like this, like when the pile of shit that I get with the Kickstarter finally shows up, like there will be a reckoning in terms of, good God almighty, how much Brimstone shit can one human being own? This is the super glue is for bases particularly. You can see she's on there nice now. For actually gluing the parts together, I use, you know, plastic cement. I use this extra thin Tamika stuff. What the fuck did I put this guy's body parts? See what I'm talking about? Like, I'm just like so blind. I can't even find the shit that I'm like actively working on. I've got that. I've got that. Yeah, there we go. So, get my glue here. Shit this stuff on here. You use plastic cement on these kinds of miniatures, these like hips miniatures, because instead of just gluing, it actually fuses them together, like melts. And so it makes a much better bond. Pretty easy to use, especially if you have this, it's got this tiny thin brush. It's really easy to control. So we'll get his back glued on here, and then we'll get his middles glued on. So that's the idea, is that this I can do in bulk, you know, and they will all have a consistent look. I'm coloring the bases to make them look differently, basically, is all I'm doing. So I'm painting, let's see, I've got it like right here. Retributor gold, or whatever, Retributor armor for the heroes, so gold bases for the heroes, which looks really cool. I'm using this Cantopex alloy, which is like kind of like a coppery, silvery look for the allies, because I want to be able to at a glance tell what a miniature is, basically. And then I went back and forth on what to do about the heroes. I had this idea about color coding them based off their size. So I was going to use like green for the small ones and so forth and so on. That just ended up being kind of stupid and too much overhead. So I ended up just doing black for all the bad guys. Just a black ring around the base. And the ring is what I'm talking about. I'm not painting the whole base. Fuck your arm, boy. So, yeah. Get that in there. Set that aside. Let it harden up. And come back to it. Okay, here's the mine, guys. Yeah, and these are dramatically better than the first edition ones. I just think it's so funny that I bought the revised editions like over 2 years ago, and I still have not even put the miniatures together. I put 2 of the hero miniatures together because I really wanted to see them. I wanted to see the quality of the new minis, and then that was it. So when I was doing this restoration project, I was playing through my mission, the Dice Fest exclusive mission, which, hey, if anybody's watching this live stream, ping me in the chat if you're interested, and I'll send you a copy of the mission, because I have like 4 of them, and I really wanted to come up with some awesome way of giving them away, but I'm just not that bright. So now I'm pretty much just like, I think I hit a clue in one of the gameplay series that I'm doing right now, where I basically ask people to describe their Shadows of Brimstone organization nightmares, because this game is just an abominable pain in the ass to organize. Like, it really is crazy. Once you're like into it, you're like fully into it. There's just so much stuff. It's just overwhelming almost. I have cracked the code. I feel like that's what I've been working on for the last couple weeks, and I showed some of that off in my gameplay video too. But yeah, anybody who is watching this live, if you want a copy of the mission, just let me know. I already sent one out to somebody who commented on a previous video. So he left a very insightful comment, which was that was my whole idea. It was like, oh, I want to like come up with some cool topic. Like, what's the thing you're most interested in seeing added to Shadows of Brimstone? Or something like that. And I just haven't gotten around to it yet, and probably never will. So you can get a mission and a promo card for Shadows of Brimstone if you comment, and I guess you would have to be listening right now to know that. I'll mention it again. Maybe later on. Okay. So, other Kickstarter stuff. Slay the Spire. I like Slay the Spire as a video game. I don't know who the asshole is who thought that it would be a good idea to turn that game into a board game. With the number of decks and shit that must require. I don't know about that one. I need to look at it, because I do like Slay the Spire. It's been a long time since I played it, but I have fond memories of it, and so I should give it at least due consideration. But I have a number of friends who played the video game too, and they said the same thing when I told them that they were going to do a board game version of it. They were like, why in God's name would you do that? Because #shuffling. Although, again, Shadows of Brimstone is 10 times worse. I mean, it's ridiculous. Like, my gear piles and my darkness cards, Growing Dread, they're so huge that I sleeved them all. That's another part of the restoration project. I went through and I re-sleeved them all. And they are so huge that I can't even shuffle them like in my hands. And I have giant, meaty, bear paw hands. And they're just like too big to shuffle. So I have to like break them into sub decks and shuffle those. It's a whole fucking thing. What a pain in the ass this game is. All right, what else do we get here? Okay, so we got another one of those guys, and then you can see that they have, maybe you can, they actually have different hands that you can put on these guys, so that's cool, like some variants, which again was definitely not there in the previous ones. Other Kickstarter stuff. Oathsworn. Oathsworn is fucking awesome. And not only is the game awesome, but if you've seen, I did some coverage of their kind of shipping disaster. I think the company is pretty cool too. Like, I like Jamie, the kind of face of the company, and I liked the way that they handled the shipping kind of disaster that they ran into. I like the way that they handled that about 10,000 times more than I like the way Simon handled theirs with Marvel Zombies. Because, and Osborne really was one of the first that had faced this issue of like, oh shit, shipping costs have tripled since we told people the shipping costs, or however much they had gone up. And they were just so sincere, and you could just see like the pathos on Jamie's face while he was filming these videos about it. He was obviously like heartbroken, basically, and they were so sincere and so detailed and so honest, and they were just like a picture perfect response in my mind to a situation like that. And so I was happy to pay more to get my copy delivered, and happy to give them a tip to help them get it across the table. Maybe I helped somebody else get their copy. I don't know. And the game is awesome. I'm playing through it. I just finished chapter 3, so I'm on chapter 4. If you're watching my Chaz of Brimstone playthrough, you can actually see it on the side of the table. I refuse to take it off the table because if I do, I will forget about it and it'll just disappear. I've got really bad ADHD, guys. I always have since I was 4 years old. I've been struggling with it, and so it's really hard for something to keep my attention if it's not front and center. And so I am actively trying to keep it front and center by not taking it off my table. Luckily, I have a big enough table. When I bought that table, which is the Moriarty table, the game topper, when I bought that thing, I would have sworn that it was big enough for basically anything. But now that it's just funny, you just always like, it's not big enough. It's never enough, guys. I forgot the stupid cord for this headset I'm wearing hanging off here. There goes his arm. My kingdom for an arm. Here, come here, you little prick. Just try and I don't try to remove mold lines or any of that kind of shit. At least I don't think that's what I'm doing. I don't know. I'm still kind of a neophyte in many ways, and the verbiage of the hobby side of the industry. But I do try to at least kind of smooth out these shitty kind of sprue lines or sprue injuries. So I keep a file nearby when I'm chopping them out, just in case. Because you'd be amazed how this stuff just like stands out at you once you actually put it on the table. You're like, what in the hell is that on his arm? There we go. And now he's ready to have his arm glued on, which is different than the arm of the other guy, which is very cool. So yeah, Oathsworn, I don't have a bad thing to say about it. There is no aspect of that game that is not totally bitchin'. Fuck does this? I'm supposed to get on here. Come on, you little bitch. Your fucking arm up. guess he's supposed to be reaching out like that, probably. If anything. It's like, I'm gonna get you. Yeah. You can usually tell if it actually fucking sits in there. Okay. So, Oathsworn, the story missions don't overstay their welcome. They're about a half hour long, which to me is perfect. I love the fact that they are completely segmented from the encounters, because it really does make it kind of a two-part game, and you don't have to sit there all night. You know, you can just do the encounter and then come back next week and do the next story and so forth. So lots of cool plot twists. I mean, the narration in the Oathsworn app is incredible. There's a lot of variance. It seems like a lot of choices that you're making, and it's just a really streamlined system too for a choose your own adventure type system like that. It's easy to manage because it's all based off of the map, and you just have these little tokens that you're placing out and tracking your time with, basically, as you move around the city. And then the encounters are just awesome. Everyone is completely unique, like doesn't even resemble the previous one that I've seen so far from the first three. And the combat is super dynamic. The enemy kind of activation is really interesting. It's challenging, kind of. I just fought the third boss, and I did kind of stomp his ass, but that might have been just because he's kind of gameable in a sense, and I was definitely taking advantage of that. Because of one of the mechanics that he has, you can almost control him. But like the battle flow system, the characters, the heroes, the Oathsworn and their unique abilities, it's all top notch. It all feels very streamlined. I love the dice versus card mechanic, where you get to choose if you want predictability or kind of an additional chance of kind of burst, because I think there's more opportunities to crit on the cards than on the dice. And they just all the Oathsworn feel very unique. I've played with 5 of them so far, and they're all very different. The art in that game is freaking astounding. The terrain box is the most insane value I think I've ever seen in a board game. Like, back the terrain box if you buy that game. If you have any interest in ever using any kind of like generic walls and shit in any other board game, because the box of terrain is as big as the core box of the game, and it has probably more plastic in it. There's more plastic in that terrain set than there is in like an Undead and Alive pledge. You know, because all the terrain is huge, it's hyper detailed, and paints up really easily as a result. And I just can't say nice enough things about the terrain for that game. And so if you have a chance to grab it during this Kickstarter, I would say go for it if you're in any position to do so, because I don't think you'll be disappointed. One thing that's interesting is, I was telling my buddy that I I showed the game to. If I were backing it today with what I know about it, I might actually back the standee version. And that is not a knock on the quality of the miniatures. They are, you know, of incredible quality. But the nature of the game is such that you really only fight every boss once. So they're on the table for like 2.5 hours and then they're gone. And the standee version comes with miniatures for the heroes. So I think you could pretty easily make an argument for just back the standee version, back the terrain, and the armory, because that is the coolest thing about that game. The most unique thing about that game is the armory, which allows you to swap out your weapon sets, basically. So when you get a new Warhammer, you actually have a Warhammer in your miniature's hand, which is just like revolutionary, and it works flawlessly. The first edition, you did have to glue the miniatures together for it to work. So basically you had to glue everything but the joints that the kind of pieces, you know, the swappable pieces slot into to get them to be stable. But once you did that, they were perfectly stable. And in the second edition, they're doing that for you so that you won't even have to kind of deal with that. And the hero miniatures are gigantic. They're like 3 times, okay, maybe not 3 times. I have a penchant for hyperbole in case you haven't noticed watching my shit. They are significantly larger than something like this, like maybe double the size of like a standard Shadows of Brimstone miniature, and just dripping with all sorts of insane detail. And they're just really high quality. I remember watching videos where the guy who did the miniatures was talking about his passion for it and whatnot. And, you know, whenever you see a video like that, you're always like, well, I'm sure he enjoys it. But like this guy, you could see him in the updates, like micro analyzing every aspect of these miniatures and going back and redoing them and trying different sculpts or different poses or whatever. And the end result is some very, very nice miniatures. That's a game that I should paint those guys, like legit. But man, I just have so many games. I've got to stop buying games. Because the backlog of Kickstarters that I have coming to me, Tanaris Adventures alone is like a half decade's worth of gaming. Because I bought every single thing that they put out for that game. And so that just by itself is such a staggeringly enormous pile of content that even with dedicated play, because I also backed the RPG and I got everything that was in the RPG, even if I play that game every week for a year, I am never going to come anywhere close to seeing like a tenth of that content. But I had to have it all. Arena Contest is an interesting one. I did not back it originally on Kickstarter. I remember it going live, and I remember at the time that they were really touting it as a competitive game, and that's why I didn't back it, because I'm not really into. It's not that I'm not into competitive games. It's just that I don't have people who want to play like competitive miniature games with me. Maybe my son will someday, but not at the moment, because I would destroy him, obviously. He would probably actually still beat me somehow. He's got the luck of the Irish. And so I didn't back it. And then everybody started raving about the campaign mode, the solo mode, which I thought was just going to be some tacked on bullshit. And so I was like, fuck. But they had it on Tabletop Simulator. Like a full, you could play that entire core box of Arena of the Contest through Tabletop Simulator in a pretty slick mod. It was the first one that I ever really messed around with. And I played through a couple of the missions on there, and I was convinced, like, this game is fucking awesome. And so I late pledged Tanara's Adventures, all in, every single thing, and then I went back and I all in pledged the RPG too. Like, even just like the lore book for that game, which isn't even physically available anymore. It's a PDF now. But in the first campaign, they printed it, and that book is like 250 pages long, and it's pretty good stuff. It's not bad. It's not Brandon Sanderson, although I actually don't really like Brandon Sanderson all that much. The Way of Kings, at least. I cannot fucking get through it. I don't care what anybody says. That book is fucking boring. Fucking 80 chapters of Kaladin being tortured or sad or mad or whatever the fuck is wrong with him at the moment. But I loved what he did with the Wheel of Time. Finishing up the Wheel of Time was astounding. And so you can see how I jumped around topics, because ADHD. But the writing was surprisingly good, and so I played that simulator a lot, and just knew that I was gonna have to buy it. And I thought that at the time, that was such a shrewd idea on their part to put like everything out there in like a polished form that didn't. I don't even remember if it's fan created. It may well be. I'm sure it is, but it's super slick, and they never fought the guy on it, to my knowledge. They didn't. They weren't trying to get it taken down. They looked at it the way that everybody should look at that stuff, which is as a marketing tool. And it worked, because they sold me $1,000 worth of board game based off of that free tabletop simulator demo. And so with all this stuff that I have coming in, Tanara's, Shadows of Brimstone Adventures is literally going to bury me in content for that. My shipment for Brimstone Adventures, I think, is over 100 pounds. Like, it might have to come on a fucking pallet. It's so much shit. And that's not to even mention Massive Darkness 2 all in, which I have and still have not even so much as looked at, because I do not have time. All my shit for Marvel United X-Men, which I know I fell off of that. I'm really bad about sticking with my coverage. Maybe I'll pick it back up. I mean, I would like to. I do like the game. Just once the Oathsworn came in, I was just like, shit, this gotta be my thing now. And so I really have to stop backing games, especially dungeon crawls. I have dungeon crawl FOMO like you've never even seen. The only stuff that I don't back is stuff that is so weird and kind of small and esoteric that I just know I'll never get into it. Like, I backed League of Dungeoneers because that I think I can totally get into and use all my Warhammer Quest stuff with. But I was just talking to somebody about Dungeon Universalis and the fact that I've never messed around with that. It's like I said, I like a certain level of polish with my games, and those games feel a little too homebrewed for me. Stuff like that, or there's another one, Dungeon Crusade, that I was actually super interested in. And I don't like proxying miniatures, and I don't like brewing my own shit, so kind of limits me on the stuff that I am excited about backing. I just like a super polished product. But I've got the entirety of Mice and Mystics sitting here, never really played more than 1 or 2 missions. I've got Warhammer Quest 1995. I've got Madara, including the 2 expansions that are going to be coming in. I've got Chronicles of Drunagor, and they're sending me so much shit with the Kickstarter, the Apocalypse Kickstarter, that, again, it's just like 100 years worth of shit. And so to stop backing these games. But then you have something like Death May Die come out, which, who knew that CMON still had it in them to run a decent, halfway decent fucking campaign? They basically addressed all the issues that I've had with their last 5 or 6 campaigns. You know, like not having physical product to show people, having fucking tabletop simulators that are reserved only to be used in a curated manner with the biggest content creators out there so that they can control the message, you know. There is no goddamn reason why they couldn't have put out that TTS mod for Marvel Zombies publicly, because they had it. Because I saw it on other channels, like Quackalope, which I don't have like a personal beef with Quackalope, but I don't like the restriction of something like that, because what it speaks to me is that they don't want you playing that game and realizing, yeah, you know, I already own 10 fucking copies of this game, so maybe not. Maybe I'll sleep on this one, because it is the same shit. I made a whole series of videos where I just like relentlessly shat on CMON for recycling abilities from previous games into Marvel Zombies. You know, it's like, oh, Captain America has the same exact fucking ability that Joe Nobody from Black Plague had. Great. I'm really excited to play. I'm really excited to get that unique experience of using push with Captain America instead of with Joe Nobody. Same fucking ability that's been in that game for 11 years or whatever. But this time they put the TTS demo out. The game is incredible, incredibly well regarded, widely regarded as their best game, basically. It's a game that is really open to expansion, and expansion increases variance, but not complexity necessarily, especially in terms of the actual like storage of the game and whatnot. Like, that game is an organizational miracle. It's one of the only games that I have of that size that I don't have custom storage for. And the miniatures look awesome. The price is right, $100. They're gonna just absolutely shred you on that shipping, but just go into it knowing that. And at least the core box, that's like $30 cheaper than the core box for something like Marvel Zombies, or it's like $20 cheaper than Undead or Alive. Marvel Zombies, maybe you could write that off as saying like, well, they got the license, which I think is total horseshit anyways. I mean, they can, Marvel United X-Men is a licensed property with tons of fucking miniatures in it, and it didn't cost an arm and a leg. But Death May Die, yeah, it's just like doing everything right. And so it's nice to see that. It's just like, are they like schizophrenic over there? Like, why have their last few campaigns been like, there's nothing I hate more in their campaigns than when they give you a wall of text about a character, but they don't show you his fucking card so that you can say to yourself, oh, yeah, this really is the exact same shit. Again, because with the Zombicide games in particular, it's just brutal. Like, it's... The level of recycling is just, like, unreal. From game to game, and even within games, it's like, there's nothing here that makes Black Widow unique. Her abilities are all just regurgitated abilities from some kind of sneaky archetype rogue character from Black Plague or Zombicide Invader. but they don't want you to know that when the campaign's going, so they don't show you anything. They just give you like this wall of text, like a generic description of, as if I need Simon to tell me who the Vision is, you know. And then, but in this campaign, they're showing off a lot of cards, like even for some of the Kickstarter exclusive expansion stuff. Like the animal expansion, I saw the actual cards, and so you can see, like, how does this impact gameplay? Is it cool or is it fucking dumb, you know? And so it's a nice return to form for Simon, and I hope that they stick with it. And I would love, honestly, to see them knock it off with the license stuff, at least for a while. Unless they were going to make a Dragon Ball Z game, in which case I could get behind that. And they were supposed to make one years ago. They took the license from fucking Angry Joe, who put that Street Fighter game out. That Street Fighter game is pretty fucking awesome. And I would kill to have Dragon Ball miniatures of that quality and size and whatnot, pre-painted. But I'm pretty sure that Simon sneaked the license somehow. Probably just through normal business practices. I'm not trying to make them sound like a dastardly rat's nest of poisonous vipers, but they got the license, and the game is nowhere to be seen, and I don't think it will ever come out now, because that was back when Super was still, like, Dragon Ball Super was still relevant, and the franchise had some buzz going, basically. I doubt that they had plans to mess around with that now that it's pretty dormant. I mean, they put a movie out every couple of years, but, you know, the anime is essentially dead. And so we don't get a Dragon Ball game. Fuck you, Simon. Or we get one that's like a half-assed, you know, like shitty. It's not like a masterpiece production. It's like something you could get at Walmart. What else is going on? In terms of Kickstarter stuff, I don't think that there's anything else that interesting. I saw Castles of Mad King Ludwig is back up. I can't get behind those huge $200 versions of $30 board games that I used to get at Barnes and Nobles on 80% clearance. Which is where I got my copy of Mad King, which I've never even played. So I kind of am not on board with that. Beyond that, I don't think there's anything else that's interested me currently on Kickstarter. Which is good, because again, I don't need all this stuff. I really don't. I need it for the channel, but the channel is not recouping its costs. You know what I desperately need is I need Monolith to put their damn web store up and reprint the Conqueror stuff, because I did not back that. Conan the Conqueror. I have the King's Pledge from the original Conan, and it's a really cool game, but again, it's competitive, and so I haven't really gotten it to the table. The Conqueror campaign introduced co-op, but it was so vague as to exactly how it worked. Does it work with previous content, or is it just like in a single campaign? It was so vague and kind of unspecific about the nature of the cooperative mode that I didn't back it, because I felt like I don't even know what this is. And I really wish I had, because then I could be playing Conan, which is a pretty cool game. It's the same reason I'm backing Batman Season 3. I don't want any more Batman stuff. but I do want to be able to play the stuff that I have. So we got to back that and get the co-op rules, which is bullshit. They should have provided those for free to people, because even back then that was a pretty standard expectation to have a co-op mode with a game like that. And other companies have put out revised rule sets similar to that for much cheaper than Monolith is doing with Batman, but I am excited about having the opportunity to get it at least. So once the pledge manager opens up, I'll definitely be back in that stuff so I can play co-op Batman with my kid, hopefully. All right, well, I've got another sprue of these guys to do, but I think I'm going to take a break now and go see what my family is doing. I don't know if anybody will ever watch this. I know DVC Bear watched it. But that's me rambling nigh incoherently on YouTube about board games for an hour while I glue stuff. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you later as soon as I figure out how to not be live anymore.